I never imagined that agreeing to one quick ride would change everything. When my best friend asked me to give his dad a lift home, I didn't think twice. It sounded like nothing, until it became the start of something I couldn't walk away from. It started with a text from my friend, Marcus. "Hey man, can you do me a huge favor? My dad's car's in the shop, and I'm stuck at work. Can you give him a ride home?" I didn't hesitate. Marcus and I had been friends for years. His dad, Mr. Bennett, had always been around, polite, well-spoken, just the kind of guy you say hi to and keep it moving. He wasn't just Marcus's dad. He was respected, successful, and honestly, kind of intimidating. "Sure, no problem," I replied, not knowing that this was going to be anything but a normal drive. When I pulled up to the address Marcus had sent, I expected to see a tire man waiting to go home. But that's not what I saw. Mr. Bennett stood by the curb, sharp as ever. He wore a tailored navy suit that fit him like it was made just for him. His silver-streaked hair was combed back perfectly, and his deep-set hazel eyes caught the light in a way that made me do a double take. As he opened the passenger door and stepped in, his cologne filled the car, warm, rich, with a hint of spice. It made the air feel heavier. "You're a lifesaver," he said, flashing a smile that felt warmer than I expected. "It's nothing," I said quickly, keeping my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road. We started with small talk. He asked about school, about Marcus, told me a little about his day, but there was something about his voice. Smooth, calm, and almost playful, like every word carried a secret. And the way he looked at me, it wasn't just casual conversation. He held eye contact a moment too long. He smiled just a bit too slowly. Something shifted in the car. It was subtle, but I felt it. "So where am I taking you?" I asked, trying to refocus. He gave a small smirk. "Quick stop before home. Just need to pick something up. Won't take long." I nodded, but the way he said it sent a weird buzz through my chest. Not fear exactly, just something I couldn't name yet. As we drove through the city, the lights played across his face. His jawline was sharp, his posture relaxed, one hand resting on his leg, his fingers tapping gently. I noticed his wedding ring glinting under the streetlights and quickly looked away. This was Marcus's dad. Just a favor. Just a ride. But then he turned to me again, his voice softer. "You've really grown up," he said, fingers brushing across his knee. "Feels like yesterday you and Marcus were just kids causing chaos in my living room." I laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, time flies, I guess." But his eyes didn't leave mine. Not right away. And that look, that moment, said more than his words ever could. I stared ahead, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The silence stretched. His presence filled the car in a way that made it hard to breathe. We pulled into a quiet, upscale neighborhood. The address led to a townhouse with soft porch lighting and no sound from inside. "I won't be long," Mr. Bennett said, unbuckling his seatbelt and straightening his jacket. I watched him walk to the door and knock. A tall man answered, dressed in fitted slacks and a clean button-down. He didn't look like family. Their body language was tight, cautious. They spoke in hushed tones, standing too close, saying too little. 15 minutes passed. I checked the clock, then the porch again. Nothing, just stillness. The light flickered once, then stopped. Just as I reached for my phone, the door opened again. Mr. Bennett stepped out, but he wasn't alone. The man followed him, lingering just behind. Mr. Bennett hesitated for a split second before putting that calm smile back on. But something in his eyes had changed. Sliding into the seat beside me, he adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. "Sorry about that." "No problem," I said, but my grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Everything good?" He paused. Yeah, of course." But I didn't believe it. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The man on the porch was still watching us. And I knew, deep down, whatever had just happened in that house. I wasn't supposed to know, but the night wasn't over. Not even close. The car was quiet. Mr. Calloway sat beside me, hands clasped in his lap, his eyes staring straight ahead. Still, I could feel the weight of his thoughts pressing down between us. It was a kind of silence that begged to be broken, but neither of us seemed ready to speak. I should have just kept driving. Should have let it go. But something about it nagged at me, like a puzzle I wasn't supposed to solve but couldn't ignore. You sure everything was okay back there? I asked, sneaking a glance at him before focusing back on the road. He hesitated. That pause told me more than anything he might have said. Yeah, he finally replied, but his voice sounded careful, too careful. Every word felt like it had been rehearsed. Just an old friend, catching up. I didn't buy it. That man on the porch, the way he stood with his arms crossed, eyes unreadable, that didn't look like someone catching up. It looked like someone in control, someone watching. But I couldn't press him. Not yet. Didn't look like much of a friend. I said, trying to sound casual, though even I could hear the edge in my voice. Mr. Calloway exhaled. His fingers moved to the cuff of his sleeve, adjusting it. A nervous habit, maybe. Things are complicated, he said at last, turning to meet my eyes as I stopped a red light. You know how life is. Sometimes you make choices, and those choices follow you longer than you expect. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I nodded slowly, not sure how to respond. The light turned green. I kept driving, but the silence between us had changed. Whatever he wasn't saying was pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. A few minutes passed. I heard him sigh, and then he leaned his head back against the seat. His shoulders relaxed just a little. You know, he said, the corners of his lips curling into a small smile, I never thought I'd see you again after all these years. It's nice. There was again. That tone, the same one from earlier, the one that made my pulse speed up just a little. I swallowed. Yeah, same. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, like we both felt something neither of us wanted to name. We didn't talk about it, but it was there. I tried to focus on the road, tried to remind myself he was Nate's dad, tried to convince myself I was imagining everything. But then he reached over, a soft, slow touch, just his fingertips brushing over my arm, light but intentional. I froze. My grip on the wheel tightened. My breath caught. He pulled his hand back slowly, that quiet smile still there, barely. Relax, he said gently. You're too tense. I laughed, nervous and thin. Yeah, well, it's been a weird night. Mr. Calloway chuckled, and for a moment, things felt lighter. But then headlights, bright in the rearview mirror. Too bright. Something twisted in my stomach. I didn't recognize the car behind us, but it was following. I switched lanes. So, did they? Unease crawled up my spine. Mr. Calloway noticed. What's wrong? I hesitated. I think we're being followed. His expression changed. Just for a second. But it was real. Fear? Worry? Whatever it wasn't nothing. He turned to look back, lips pressing into a tight line. Drive faster, he said, his voice low and urgent. I did. So did the car behind us. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned onto a side road, weaving through smaller streets, hoping to lose them, but they kept up. I glanced at Mr. Calloway. His hands were clenched into fists now. Take the next left, he said sharply. I obeyed, speeding through dark streets, the tires skimming too close to the curb. Still, the car behind us stayed close. Too close. And then, just like that, it was gone. I didn't slow down right away. My hands were still locked on the wheel. My breath was uneven. Mr. Calloway finally exhaled. His eyes closed for a moment. Then he turned to me. Take me somewhere safe, he said. And this time his voice was completely unguarded. No smooth tone. No hidden meanings. Just raw, honest fear. I didn't ask any more questions. Not yet. I kept driving, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds just to make sure. The city lights blurred past us, neon signs casting flickering shadows across the wet pavement. The only sound was the soft hum of the tires and the tension sitting between us like a third passenger. Mr. Calloway sat rigid. His breathing was steady, but his fingers traced slowly over the leather seat, like he was grounding himself, like something inside him was unraveling. I should have asked, should have demanded answers. But the way he said it, take me somewhere safe, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just paranoia. That car wasn't random. And whatever was happening, he knew exactly what it was. I drove until the city lights faded into a quieter neighborhood, old, worn down, dimly lit. I pulled up to a small motel, the kind of place where no one asked questions, the kind of place people disappeared into. Mr. Calloway looked at it for a long second, then finally spoke. "This'll do." I didn't move. I just sat there, trying to understand how a simple favor had turned into all this. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Mr. Calloway hesitated before stepping out of the car, his hand hovering over the door handle like he wasn't quite sure this was the right move. Then he let out a slow breath, gave a small nod to himself, and climbed out. I followed him inside the motel lobby. The place smelled like cheap bleach and dust. At the front desk sat a bored-looking man in his late 50s, yellow teeth, thinning hair, eyes locked on a tiny TV playing some old crime drama. Mr. Calloway pulled out a credit card, but the name on it wasn't his. Probably fake. Nothing about tonight had been normal. The clerk barely looked up as he slid a key across the counter. Room 204. We walked up a narrow staircase. The carpet was old and worn, the walls stained from years of cigarette smoke. Mr. Calloway didn't say a word as he unlocked the door. He stepped inside like he'd done this before, like he knew how to disappear. That thought made my stomach twist. The room was small and sad. A single bed with a faded floral comforter, a wooden dresser with a dusty TV, and a flickering lamp in the corner. I closed the door behind us and locked it without even thinking. My gut told me we still weren't safe. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands pressed his thighs, staring at the floor. The weight of everything that happened tonight looked like it had finally hit him. For a long moment, he just breathed deep control breaths, like he was trying to keep himself from falling apart. I leaned against the door, arms crossed. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" My voice was steady, but even I could hear the tension in it. He let out a humorless laugh and shook his head. "You always were persistent." "Yeah, well, getting chased through the streets by a guy who looks like he stepped out of a mob movie kind of raises some questions." He ran a hand through his hair, then finally looked at me. "His name is Victor." The way he said it, like the name itself carried danger. Like it wasn't just a name, it was a warning. "And who the hell is Victor?" He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally said, "Someone I should have cut ties with a long time ago." That wasn't an answer. I stepped forward. "Calloway, I need the truth. Why were we being followed? Who is he to you?" There was another long pause, and then, like he finally gave up trying to lie, he let out a heavy sigh. "He's an old mistake. Someone I got involved with when I thought I had nothing left. I was in a bad place. My marriage was falling apart. Nate's mom and I, we hadn't been in love for years. We were just living under the same roof. And then I met him." His fingers curled against the edge of the bed. "Victor made me feel alive again. Wanted. Seen. He gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. And I mistook it for love." I sat in the chair across from him, rubbing the back of my neck as the pieces started coming together. "Messy, but real. Now he won't let go," I said quietly. Calloway nodded. "He doesn't love people. He owns them." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "And you didn't think to mention any of this before I picked you up tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but it came out sharper than I intended. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "I didn't know he was still watching me." I shook my head. "So what does he want now?" Calloway's answer was one word, but it hit me like a punch. Control. That was when I really understood. This wasn't just some messy relationship or an ex who couldn't move on. This was darker, deeper, something he'd been trying to escape for a long time. And now I was caught in the middle of it. He looked at me with that guarded expression again. "You should walk away." But the problem was, I already knew I wouldn't. Any rational person would have left, called the cops, washed their hands of this whole thing. But the way he said it, like he already knew I wouldn't leave, like part of him hoped I wouldn't. I let out a long breath, leaned back in the chair. "Not happening." He shook his head, somewhere between frustrated and thankful. You don't understand what you're getting into. Then explain it to me, I said, my voice low but firm, because I don't like being chased without knowing why. He stared out the window for a moment, like he was expecting Victor to be out there, just beyond the shadows. Maybe he was. I met him 2 years ago, he said, his voice quieter now. I was lost, empty, and he saw that, used it. He swallowed hard. Victor doesn't fall in love. He finds your weakness and turns it into a chain. He doesn't care about you. He just doesn't want anyone else to have you. I watched him as he spoke, his face tired, his hands clenched like he was bracing for the past to come crashing back in. And in that moment, I knew the worst part. This wasn't over. Not even close. There was a long pause after I asked, "So you left?" He didn't answer right away. A heavy silence filled the room, thick enough to choke on. I should have been focused on the danger still lurking out there, on Victor, and whatever kind of threat he really was. But instead, I found myself watching Mr. Calloway closely. His collar had come undone, his tie was gone, and there was just enough of his chest showing to make me forget for a moment that we were in a run-down motel hiding from someone dangerous. I shouldn't be thinking about this, I told myself, but I was. And now he wants you back, I said quietly. Calloway nodded, meeting my eyes. He looked exhausted. But there was something else in his expression, too. Something unspoken. A part of him he hadn't let anyone see in a long time. You don't have to do this alone, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. He let out a soft scoff. You don't owe me anything. I know. Another pause. This time it was different, charged, tense. Then he let out a breath of a laugh, low and tired. You always were a stubborn kid. I'm not a kid anymore. I didn't mean for my voice to sound like that, low, certain, maybe even daring, but it came out that way. And the second I said it, I saw it. The shift in his eyes, the quick swallow, the way his fingers twitched like he didn't know what to do with them. And when I stepped closer, he didn't stop me. I know, he whispered. I should have turned around. I should have ended the night right there, left before we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But I didn't. Instead, I reached out, brushing the cuff of his sleeve with my fingers, barely touching him, but it was enough. I heard the breath catch in his throat. When I looked up, his eyes were darker, pupils blown wide with something he wasn't ready to admit. You don't have to do this, he said softly. I know. And then I leaned in, slow, intentional. When our lips finally touched, it was like a dam broke inside both of us. He tensed for a second, then melted into the kiss, like he had been holding that breath for years. It was careful at first, unsure, but the moment I slid my hand into his hair, tipping his head gently, he let go. A soft sound escaped his lips, something between a sigh and a groan, and suddenly his hands were on me, one gripping my wrist, the other sliding up my arm, his touch hungry, desperate, like he had been starving for this. I didn't pull away. I pressed into him until his back hit the headboard, his hands finding my waist and pulling me even closer. We were both shaking, both unraveling, years of denial, guilt, and longing pouring out in a single breathless moment. I tasted whiskey and something else, something darker, something that made my heart race. When his hand slipped under my shirt, tracing the skin along my ribs, I knew I should stop. He even tried to, his voice catching. We shouldn't. But I cut him off, silencing the protest with another kiss. Then stop me, I said, but he didn't. What happened next? I won't describe in detail. Just know that it was raw. It was honest. It was filled with the kind of emotion we had both buried for far too long. And afterward, when we finally collapsed against each other, breathless, tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of old detergent and motel air, I realized something. This wasn't just one night. This was a beginning. He lay beside me, chest rising and falling under my fingertips, skin warm, face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before. His hair was messy, lips slightly swollen. He looked peaceful, but the world outside was still waiting. Eventually he spoke. Nate can never know. I turned to face him, watching his eyes hidden in half shadows. His voice was low, worn, I know, I said. There was another long silence. Then he whispered, I don't regret it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Neither do I. But we both knew things were only going to get more complicated, because this wasn't over. Victor was still out there, and whatever was growing between us now, it wasn't going to stay hidden forever. The room still smelled like us. His scent lingered on my skin, his warmth still in the sheets. I stayed beside him, fingers tracing the shape of his chest, memorizing it like I was afraid I'd wake up and find it was all a dream. And when I looked at him again, he was watching me too. There was no going back. Not now. His fingers tangled in my hair, guiding me, showing me just how much he wanted this, how much he wanted me. And God, I wanted him too. A low groan escaped his throat as his free hand clutched at the sheets, his breathing growing heavier with every passing second. His muscles tensed and shifted beneath my touch, and I had never seen him like this. So undone, so unguarded. It was addictive. By the time I came back up, his hands were already reaching for me, pulling me on top of him. His mouth met mine, hot and urgent. His body moved against mine with intention, every movement deliberate, every touch lighting me up from inside. One more time. I whispered against his lips, fingers digging into his shoulders. He growled low, flipping me onto my back in one smooth motion, holding me there, eyes dark with hunger. His lips brushed my ear as he murmured, You sure you can handle it? I arched into him. Try me? And he did. We lost track of time. Hours passed, maybe more. Neither of us looked at a clock. It didn't matter. Out there, the world could burn. Victor didn't matter. Nate didn't matter. The rules, the risks, the fallout, none of it mattered. Not in that room. By the time we were both spent, the sky outside had shifted to deep blue, the very beginning of dawn. Pale light slipped through the edges of the curtain, soft and cold against the heat still clinging to our bodies. We lay tangled together, his arm draped around my waist, his breath slow and steady against the back of my neck. We should probably get some sleep, he murmured, though neither of us moved to close our eyes. Yeah, I said, my fingers absent-mindedly tracing shapes against the skin. The silence was different now. Not awkward, not heavy, just intimate, familiar, in a way that felt like more than just lust. What happens now? I finally asked. He let out a breath, long and tired, then kissed my temple. We figure out. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew the second we stepped out of that motel room, reality would slam into us hard. But for now, in this sliver of time before the world woke up, I didn't care. I wasn't letting him go. The room still smelled like us, our skin, our sweat, the sharp scent of his cologne still clinging to my body. The sheets were a twisted mess, evidence of everything we had shared. I sat up slightly, watching him. The bedside lamp cast golden shadows across his chest, his face softened in the low light. He looked wrecked in the best way. Hair tousled, lips swollen from mine, faint marks trailing down his neck where I had left pieces of myself behind. He wasn't the calm, composed man I had known for so long. Not the well-dressed businessman or the guarded father. He was just a man, raw, open, real. I reached for him again, fingers brushing his wrist, feeling the slow beat of his pulse beneath my touch. He tensed at first, then exhaled, leaning back on his elbows. Again, he asked, voice rough, but there was a hint of a smile there. I smirked, crawling over him, pressing a soft kiss to his throat. Unless you've had enough. His hand shot up, fingers gripping the back of my neck, pulling me into another kiss. This one deeper, slower, aching. He still tasted like the whiskey we'd passed between us earlier, warm, sharp, addictive. I should stop, he murmured against my lips. Then stop. I challenged, rolling my hips just enough to make him gasp. His control slipped, and within seconds, we were lost in each other again, consumed by a fire that neither of us could seem to put out. The headboard slammed into the wall with every movement. The room was thick with heat, with breathless sounds, with want. It was reckless. It was desperate. It was everything I shouldn't have let happen. But it did happen, again and again. And I didn't care. Not that this couldn't last. not that we didn't know how to move forward. All I cared about was him. The way he made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered. When we finally collapsed beside each other once more, chests heaving, bodies slick with sweat, the sun had fully risen. Golden light washed across his face, making him look almost unreal. He turned his head slowly, eyes locking with mine. "This is dangerous," he said quietly. "I know. I don't know how to stop." "Then don't." He let out a shaky breath, running his hand slowly down my arm, tracing the curve of my shoulder, the dip of my waist. His touch lingered, like he was memorizing me. "Nate can never know," he whispered again. I swallowed hard, the weight of reality creeping back in. "Then what do we do?" I asked. There was a long pause. He turned onto his side, his fingers still trailing across my skin. "We keep this a secret. Just for us. For now. And if I don't want to keep it a secret..." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "Then we figure that out when the time comes." The truth settled between us. Heavy, complicated. Victor, Nate, the consequences waiting outside that door. But when he pulled me in close again, when he kissed me like he was still starving for more, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And no matter what happened next, I wasn't ready to let him go. Not now. Not ever.